The canal behind Celesta Witter's shop was already coughing up wisps of morning fog when she slipped the skeleton key into the lock. Bruges woke slowly, church bells muffled, cobbles slick with dew, rowing oars dipping in measured heartbeats. Yet the small chocolate endeavor had always beaten the city to consciousness. For 15 years, Celeste had been first to greet the copper kettles, copper that gleamed like sunlight frozen in metal. She had been, by every newspaper's account, the tongue of Bruges, the woman who could conjure winter bonfires and spring violets out of cocoa beans. That morning she cracked open the door, expecting the familiar concerto. Cacao butter, roasted nibs, Tahitian vanilla pods breathing faintly of orchids. Instead, the air hit her like a draft from an empty cellar. Nothing. No hum of bitterness, no whisper of sugar. She drew in another breath so sharp her ribs hurt. Still nothing. At first she thought, a cold, a quirk of sinus, but panic pricked beneath her skin. She sprinted to the tasting bar, pinched a shard of dark couverture from yesterday's batch and let it melt on her tongue. She waited for the usual overture, smoky start, cherry flourish, a snap of spice at the curtain call. All she received was texture, the bland wax of uncolored memory. The piece clattered to the floor. Her knees nearly followed. Bruges had 1,000 chocolatiers, but none with her palate. Without it, she was only a woman with stained aprons and trembling hands. She spent 3 days pretending nothing was wrong. Her assistants, Reuben and Lise, watched her hover instead of taste, mixing by guesswork. Customers praised the truffles out of habit, she suspected. Yet Celeste saw confusion flicker in their eyes. The annual Salon du Chocolat was 6 weeks away. Journalists would descend to catalog every nuance of her new collection. If she failed to deliver, her legend would curdle like cream left on a summer sill. On the 4th morning, she locked herself in the tiny office upstairs, dialed a number she had sworn never to use, and told the voice on the other end, "I need a palette." "Pardon?" The voice sounded hoarse, continental yet frayed at the edges, like a silk tie that had seen too many suitcases. "A palette," she repeated, then forced herself to explain. The voice belonged to Gabrielle Delacour, once the enfant terrible of French gastronomy columns, now a travel-weary critic whose scathing wit had burned through restaurants from Lyon to Kyoto. He was in Antwerp nursing what the papers called exhaustion and what his editor called insubordination. He had not penned a proper review in 8 months. "I am finished with miracles," he told her after listening. "Find yourself a local taster. They taste only what sits on the tongue," Celeste said. "You wrote, that flavor is a cartographer of memory. I need a map reader, Monsieur Delacour." A silence long enough to make her pulse drum. Then, "I'll take the evening train." Gabriel arrived just after dusk, carrying a leather satchel scarred with passport stamps. Celeste recognized him from magazine foldouts. Lean, dark-haired, eyes perpetually squinting, as if something too bright lingered in his periphery. Yet in person he seemed smaller, a candle burned deep into its stub. He stepped inside the shop, inhaled, and issued a small, surprised laugh. "Smoke and raisins," he murmured. "You age your beans in brandy barrels." Celeste's chest tightened. "Not anymore," she said before thinking. She motioned toward the kitchen. "Shall we?" Reuben and Lise had gone home. Only stainless steel counters and the low hum of refrigerators remained. Celeste laid out 12 prototypes, bonbons dusted in green matcha, pralines licked with sea salt, ganaches crowned by candied yuzu. Gabriel tasted without ceremony, breaking each piece, examining cross-sections, sliding morsels onto his tongue with the solemnity of a sommelier. He closed his eyes after every bite, then spoke as though describing weather visible only to him. Number 1. Bitter opening like charred cedar, mid-notes of sour plum, finishes thin-watered ink on parchment. 2. Caramelized milk, but the sugar overplays its hand, obscuring the nutmeg. 3. "Ah, a flirt," he said, and Celeste's breath caught. "Begins shy, swells into honeyed apricot, and vanishes before you say her name. She scribbled everything. He never asked why she did not taste alongside him. After the final bonbon, he wiped his palette knife clean and said, "Your textures remain perfect. Your flavors are restless. Restless." The word felt like both accusation and lifeline. "Can you help me tame them?" Gabriel glanced at the copper kettles cooling in the corner. "If you'll have me for a few weeks, I'm tired of hotel breakfasts that taste of someone else's fatigue." Celeste nodded, relief trembling through her limbs. "You will stay in the attic flat. Breakfast at 8, tasting at 9. We visit suppliers in the afternoons?" He shrugged, as though being drafted into her secret war cost him nothing. But she saw a flicker of something, curiosity perhaps, or the faintest lick of hope ignite behind his eyes. The campaign began next morning. Celeste measured and tempered. Gabriel tasted and translated. At first, their language clashed. She spoke in ratios, temperatures, the physics of fat crystals. He responded with metaphors. "Make the praline whisper like a cello at midnight." She frowned, he smirked, and the days spiraled into arguments that tasted sharper than any cacao. But when dusk spilled rose gold over the canal, they found themselves laughing, exhaustion melting barriers like sugar under flame. She confessed how she'd once couriered cacao beans across 3 borders in a smuggler's van just to secure a varietal that hinted of pipe tobacco. He told her he'd broken off an engagement to a fellow critic after realizing they could no longer surprise each other at dinner. "You fear boredom more than disappointment," she said. He lifted an eyebrow. "And you fear silence of the senses." Celeste stiffened. She had not told him, could not tell anyone, about her stolen taste. He saw her withdraw, but instead of pressing, he handed her a spoon of newly whipped ganache. "Even deaf conductors feel vibration," he murmured. "Taste with your fingertips." The spoon quivered in her grip. She slid a finger through the mixture, velvet, cool, but blooming with latent heat. Her pulse replied like a bass drum. In that moment, she almost forgot the chasm on her tongue. Day by day, they ventured outside. At the Wednesday market, Gabriel led her past stalls piled with gooseberries and wild leeks, asking merchants to slice samples so Celeste could press fruit to her lips, inhaling aroma, though flavor remained a blank page. He described each bite until her notebooks overflowed. Gooseberry is a green comet, bright, sour, with a tail of grass. Lake is winter soil reciting poetry of yesterday's rain. She sketched these metaphors into recipes, chasing textures, temperatures, aromas. One afternoon, rain pummeled the canal windows while they worked on a ruby-hued chocolate infused with raspberry vinegar and Szechuan pepper. Gabriel tasted, winced, yet smiled. "The pepper crackles like static on an old record," he said. Then softer. "I'd forgotten the thrill of finding words for taste." Celeste looked up, caught by how the dim light haloed his unshaven jaw. "And I'd forgotten the thrill of trusting someone with my craft," she whispered. Their closeness grew in increments, a brush of shoulders when reaching for thermometers, an accidental meeting of flour-dusted hands, long discussions over Flemish stew in the quiet bistro around the corner. Gabriel spoke of his nomad childhood, diplomat parents, 7 schools, no place to anchor. Celeste told him Bruges had always been her anchor, yet lately felt like water slipping between fingers. He never asked why she sometimes froze, spoon halfway to her lips, eyes bleak with absence. Perhaps he suspected, but courtesy held his tongue. The salon loomed like a storm cloud. Competitors released previews on social media, daring innovations with olive oil, with blue cheese, with kombu. Celeste stewed in anxiety so thick Gabriel could taste it in the stairwell. "What story will your collection tell?" he asked one sleepless night as they sat on crates of sugar. "Story?" she echoed, fingering a lock of hair escaped from her scarf. "You once said chocolate is narrative," he reminded. "What chapter are you writing now?" Celeste swallowed. A chapter where the heroine loses her compass and follows someone else's. Gabriel's hand hovered near hers. Then right about that. Her laugh cracked like brittle caramel. Who wants a bonbon flavored with failure? Failure? He leaned closer until she felt his breath. Warm like vanilla steamed milk. Taste is a dictator, Celeste. You've been freed of tyranny. Tell the world how silence sounds. The words struck with absurd clarity. Without taste, she'd been listening, really listening, to texture, to aroma, to Gabriel's florid translations. There was music in those absences. She set to work on a new Poésie de Résistance, a trilogy of chocolates exploring the architecture of senses. The first, Echo, was a shell-thin dome that shattered to release vapor infused with bergamot and smoke, fragrance experienced only by nose. The second, Murmur, did popping candy in dark pralines so texture danced on tongue regardless of flavor. The third, Heartbeat, was molded from rare Peruvian white cacao and brushed with edible silver. Its sweetness was restrained, letting body warmth soften cocoa butter until the piece melted like a secret confession. Gabriel tasted each iteration, offered notes, but the vision was hers. Together they packaged the trilogy in small wooden boxes, etched with the words L'écoute du silence, listening to silence. On the eve of the salon, Celeste found Gabriel on the attic balcony overlooking medieval rooftops. The moon bruised the clouds with lavender light. She handed him a mug of hot chocolate, extra bitter. I owe you more than payment, she said. He cradled the mug. I've been paid in memories. She drew a breath heavy with unspoken truths. There's something I must tell you before tomorrow. I know, he said gently. Your secret has been shouting through the quiet. Her shoulders sagged. I taste nothing, Gabriel. Haven't for weeks. I suspected the first day you never put a single bonbon to your lips. He sipped. I was waiting for you to trust me. Shame flooded her. You must think me a fraud. On the contrary, you made art from absence. That's integrity. He set the mug aside, cupped her hands. You also made me feel essential when I'd begun to believe I was just noise in other people's dining rooms. Desire hummed between them. Celeste tilted her head, searching for certainty. Gabriel closed the distance. His kiss tasted, she guessed, of roasted cocoa and possibility. She felt rather than tasted the warmth blooming through her. For the first time since her senses abandoned her, she did not mourn what was missing. She reveled in what remained. Morning brought clang of trolley wheels, swirl of perfumed crowds inside the gargantuan exhibition hall. Celeste's stand, modest yet elegant, sat between the gleaming empire of a Parisian confection giant and a molecular chocolatier from Tokyo, armed with nitrogen canisters. She and her staff arranged rows of boxes, while Gabrielle pinned a small placard describing the trilogy. Echo, fragrance of memory. Murmur, rhythm of texture. Heartbeat, warmth of presence. When they reached Celeste, gangling like baited promises. When they reached Celeste, Gabrielle stepped back, letting her speak. She told them not about ingredients, but about loss, how absence can sharpen every other sense, how flavor is more than chemistry. The judges listened, intrigued, but the crowd behind them listened, rapt. Tasting spoons touched lips. Eyes widened. Words arose. Haunting. Innovative. Poetic. Celeste catalogued reactions the way Gabrielle once catalogued taste. Then came Madame Fournier, doyenne of the salon, bearing a clipboard like a scepter. She tasted Echo, inhaling the vapor. Unconventional, she said with a hint of suspicion. She tried Murmur, the candy crackled. Finally, Heartbeat. She closed her eyes. When they opened, they shimmered. You have given shape to silence, she whispered and moved on. Hours crawled. Celeste's legs trembled from standing. Gabriel fed her sips of mint water. She saw him through new lenses now. The man who lent her his senses, who never made her feel lesser for lacking her own. At twilight, the loudspeaker summoned finalists to the stage. Celeste's heart sprinted. Names echoed across the hall until Celeste DeWitt, L'écoute du Salons rang out like a cathedral bell. She looked at Gabriel. His grin was boyish, unguarded. On stage, spotlights blinded her, but applause carried her forward. Madame Fournier presented the silver medallion for Best Artistic Vision. The gold went to the Moleculier Chocolatier, but Celeste didn't feel hollow. She felt full. Back at her stand, she found Gabriel waiting. She pressed the cool medallion to his chest. "This belongs to you." He shook his head. "I only held the lantern. You walked the path." They began dismantling displays. Celeste plucked a stray heartbeat from the tray, absent-mindedly placed it on her tongue. A rush, slow but certain, bloomed, not full flavor, more like color seeping into a faded photograph. A ghost of cacao, a feather of vanilla. She gasped, nearly dropping the piece. Gabriel rushed over. "What's wrong?" I tasted that," she whispered, tears fogging her vision. He steadied her. "Truly?" Like an echo returning, she laughed, wetter than the canal in November. Maybe the silence needed to be heard before I could leave. He brushed a tear with his thumb. "Or maybe you finally trusted yourself to listen." They returned to Bruges with dawn. In the shop's kitchen, Celeste brewed cocoa, slipping tastes across her tongue, marveling at faint sweetnesses sparking like fireflies. Still dim, but there. Gabriel watched as if witnessing spring's first bud. She set 2 cups on the marble counter. "Stay," she said. "Be my critic in residence. We will map flavors together." He raised his cup. 2 cartographers, steam twined upward, nothing but water and ground beans, yet infused now with stories of loss, courage, and the unexpected flavor of love. Bruges outside stirred wake church bells, oars, cobbles, while inside 2 palates, newly in tune, prepared to taste whatever chapters came next.